Evangelion doesn't answer many questions about its history. It leaves us in constant darkness of the events that transpired before Shinji was instructed to pilot EVA 01. But that doesn't mean there isn't a record of the story's history. Here I'll bring to light what led to the city of Tokyo 3 to meet such a violent end. What the scriptures of the first ancestral race, the two impacts that left the Earth's crust scarred, the twin moons that brought life to this planet, all meant for life in our galaxy. There's a lot of mythology to unravel, incidents to make sense of. This is the story of what happened before Neon Genesis began. This is the lore of Evangelion. In the beginning, in a time with no specified years, there was life on another world, the first ancestral race, the true creators of humanity as we know it. This race of living organisms populated some world within our galaxy, but as does every great civilization, there came a time of its eventual collapse. Faced with certain extinction of their kind, the first ancestral race's 7 surviving beings mounted 7 carrier vessels, which we would come to know as moons, carrying seeds of life. Each of the 7 seeds was unique in genetic material, representing the 7 surviving ancestors that used their bodies and souls as data for these carriers of life. Their intent was to send these moons containing their essence to planets across the Milky Way so that life would not die out and their legacy would live on in the bodies of their descendants. Each seed was dramatically different from the others, each with specific attributes that would assist in new life prospering. But there was the worry that no 2 seeds could coexist on the same world. The ancestral race had advanced over millennia, become something close to perfect, beings that could thrive as simply souls or in physical forms. Something as simple as coexisting with those different was not such a difficult task, but these offspring would be too raw and unpredictable. They'll conflict and use violence to solve disagreements. So within each moon a spear was added, a weapon that would act as a failsafe to prevent a moon from spreading its life if another was already present on this planet, in hopes of avoiding a race war between their different descendants. Alongside the failsafe, one other item was stowed on each vessel: the Dead Sea Scrolls, objects that outlined the use of each moon if life was to discover them, either in a dormant or active state. It would outline the history of the first ancestors and bring light to their beginnings. It would also outline the protocol for using these moons in hopes of avoiding the gravest of sins, meshing the genetic and soul material of 2 separate ancestors. With the 7 moon vessels ready to depart across the galaxy, the 7 remaining ancestors gave their bodies and souls to the next generations of life. Only their plan faced many obstacles. The fate of 5 of the moons is of no interest to us, but there was one that made it to the planet known as Earth, one dubbed, due to its color, the White Moon. The White Moon safely nestled itself into modern-day Antarctica, Earth still devoid of any sign of life. Per its protocol, the first ancestor we come to know as Adam spread a form of life across the planet, though it wasn't human as you may have thought. A life form known as angels spread across the earth. Their seeds of life contained an attribute coined as the fruit of life, a fruit gifting these organisms with unlimited energy and immense physical strength. These angels were diverse in form, some large, others small. Many were constructed of physical matter, while others were like great balls of energy. The angels thrived on this planet, bringing to Earth its first form of life, but the success of Adam's reproduction of the galaxy was short-lived. The day of the first impact marked the end of the repopulation of the White Moon. Another of the 7 moons had stumbled upon Earth, crashing into its crust in what is modern-day Hakone, Japan. The Black Moon of the ancestral Lilith wiped out a large percent of angel life on Earth in a mass extinction event rivaling that of the dinosaurs. The first ancestors had protocol for an issue such as this, and the Black Moon's Spear of Longinus should activate, preventing Lilith's offspring from harming the angel's spread of life. Only it had lost its spear when crashing into Earth. With the only way to stop Lilith's production of offspring gone, the White Moon is forced to use its own spear, deriving Adam's descendants their birthright to the planet of Earth. The creation of angels ceased. The ones who survived the first impact lost to time. Lilith offspring, what we know as humans, usurps the right to populate Earth. As the angels had the fruit of life, gifting them unlimited energy, the humans held something more crude, the fruit of knowledge, the power of reasoning and logic, the ability to apply the scientific method and understand the workings of the universe itself in an attempt to harness its power. As these smaller beings lacked unlimited energy, they were forced to fight for their survival, seize the power they were devoid of, and in this struggle, they became more dangerous and powerful than the angels could ever become. Humans, while their starting point was weaker, their species lacks a ceiling for growth. The longer they exist, the stronger they'll grow. But knowledge and evolution can be dangerous. They bring conflict of interest, abuse of power, fear of the unknown. War between factions of humans paints these lands in ruin. Industrial revolutions leave the planet reeling from our advancements. Progress comes with blood and wreckage. We cannot move forward without also regressing. From the ashes of the old rises something new. New principles, new ideas, new ways forward. For years, humanity destroys itself to become something different. Lilith kind continues to evolve into more diverse and unique beings. While angels wore their differences on their sleeves, humanity's was found more in that which cannot be seen. Through cultures, beliefs, values, and communities, humanity itself seemed more diverse than angels ever were. While from one human to the next, not much seemed to change in appearance. The internal differences caused discord between some and bonds with others. Humanity's continued advancements were headed by the idea of science, of the understanding of the world and the laws of our reality. Schools of thought were created to understand everything from why we were created to why feather and bowling balls fall at the same speed when emitting the idea of gravity. Humanity searched for answers and would sometimes find them. And as time went on, these ideas may transform or be completely replaced with better ones as the species became smarter. Their quest to discover the raison d'etre reached its peak through the discovery of the white moon still nestled within Antarctica. The vessel remained dormant, holding within the body and soul of Adam himself. With knowledge comes curiosity. We as humans crave to know that which is unknown. We see a box and immediately wonder what's within. We look at a machine and try to understand how it functions. We stare at the stars and ponder what lies beyond what we can see. Humanity has always been this way, for better or for worse. Though this time, it's not as easy to see things in shades of gray. September 10th, 2000. The organization known as Zeal sends Dr. Katsuragi on an expedition to research the white moon recently discovered in Antarctica with the intent to learn more about its origins. Now Zeal itself, their origins are largely a mystery. The secret organization runs in the background of the world order with immense power and wealth. An ancient group who all too likely discovered the black moon that had landed in Hakone centuries ago. A revelation which sparked their inception. The organization originally began as a religious cult, having found their ancestors' Dead Sea Scrolls that became their scripture, that outlined humanity's creation as descendants of Lilith and the inner workings of the moon. This led Zeal down a dangerous path towards human evolution, having read within the scroll about something that particularly scratched their fancy: instrumentality. The merging of all Lilith-based life, an existence without death, without pain, without fear. It was as if they discovered a form of godship. The temptations of a man-made heaven became their life purpose. To bring about this world they sought, grave sin must be committed. Zeal must unite two forms of ancestral life, a being both angel and human, to create a godlike being, capable of ushering in heaven on earth by uniting all human life within a single existence. A being that rivals God in power, that is, if there is even one out there, watching as humanity creates hell on earth in pursuit of heaven. To research how to possibly bring such a being to fruition, Zeal sought after the scientific discovery outlined in the texts of the ancient world. With simple deductions, they had hypothesized the existence of another moon on their planet, backed by seismic activity that had occurred in ancient times in Antarctica, which is when Katsuragi's research team enters into the picture. At the sight of the white moon, the doctor discovered a dormant atom within the structure. Katsuragi hypothesized that this entity could be awakened by pulling the spear from its vessel, believing it to be a failsafe that halted his actions, and following the removal, it would make contact with the being. It was a risky play, but the only way to advance their knowledge of Adam. Zeal knew the risk of what would become coined as the first contact experiment between Lilith life and Adam, but they withheld this information from Katsuragi. His team's death was a vital stepping stone in their plan to unite Adam and Lilith life. However, one researcher, Gendo Ikari, came to the conclusion on his own that the experiment would lead to destruction, rivaling the first impact. The man leaves the expedition only a day before the planned contact, which would leave the world in a state of desolation. He informed his former college professor, Kozu Fuyutsugi, that he too may want to leave Antarctica within the next 48 hours. September 13th, 2000, 2 days after the beginning of Katsuragi's expedition. His team and him performed the first contact experiment with Adam, setting off a cataclysmic event, damning their lives. Energy levels spike to heights unheard of. This beam becomes a time bomb with a blast radius larger than anything man-made. The team tries to reattach the spear and nullify the potential for blast. but this only prevents Adam from becoming a larger bomb. They did what they could to mitigate the damage to be caused, shrinking the blast size to that of Antarctica. But there isn't any hope for their own salvation. Dr. Katsuragi does what he can to save his own daughter, Misato, from perishing, stowing her in the only escape pod available, sending her just outside the blast radius in time. The girl becomes the only human to survive what becomes known as the second impact, though the trauma of losing her father would leave her afraid of emotional attachment way into her adult life. The research team had sacrificed themselves to save the planet, though in the aftermath, the world was a different place. Adam had been reduced to an embryo in the explosion, his body once again dormant in this state, though his soul had taken on a new form, one containing the genes of Lilith. Kaoru Nagisa was born from the explosion of excess energy, becoming a being both angel and Lilin. Zeal had obtained what they wanted. The explosion was labeled as an anti-AT field energy explosion, a type of energy angels are capable of creating that destroys the AT fields that humans possess, which allow them to maintain shape. Caught in one of these blasts, humans turn into their true form of a liquid, the same type that secretes from the glands of their ancestor Lilith. These fields are a rather complex plotline that spells out angels and humans as mortal enemies, each capable of complete destruction of the other. It's a shame these two moons landed on the same planet, damning them both to ages of conflict. With the destruction of the ice caps and the anti-AT field energy explosion, sea levels rose dramatically and the world faced a crisis. Tsunamis killed over 2 billion people in the southern hemisphere before any disaster relief could be dispatched. In the chaos, only 2 days after the second impact, on September 15th of the year 2000, war broke out worldwide. Refugees warred with countries, particularly bad in India and Pakistan, nearest to the countries now wiped off the map, completely submerged in the rising waters. The two rival powers became the first nations to have a nuclear exchange. Fallout ensued as more countries fell into inner and global conflict, warheads killing millions. Tokyo was one of the cities lost to these bombings, marking the third time Japan faced the horrors of nuclear fallout. 500,000 Japanese died on September 20th alone with the destruction of Tokyo. For 6 months, this fighting continued until February 14th, 2001, when the Valentine ceasefire ended this bloodshed. 4 billion lives, over half the population, were lost to this war, and with the collapse of most nation-states, the United Nations became a greater global power. Countries like the United States, Germany, Japan, and China continued to hold some individuality, but most of their military still fell under the control of the UN. In the shadows of this rising power, zeal lurked within, pulling the strings of the organization. They continued to perpetuate their goal by founding the research division Gaiden, whose job on the surface was to prevent a third impact, but in actuality was a way of controlling the furtherment of atom-based research to incite such an event like the third impact, that to them would usher in the new world of human instrumentality. Such a goal was only shared with the highest-ranking scientist, Gendo Ikari, and his wife Yui. Yui saw this future as a world where her son would not have to grow up experiencing the pain and suffering of everyday life. The nuclear war they had just experienced the past year was traumatizing enough for something like instrumentality to seem like a logical solution. Yui saw instrumentality as something humanity could use temporarily, uniting all humans in a collective consciousness, so that they could come to understand one another through what is practically forced empathy. All of people becoming one with you, leading you to understand all walks of life. She believed they could then end instrumentality and go back to regular day life, though with a newfound understanding of each other, and in some sense, achieving peace. But this would be ignoring the desires of zeal, who want instrumentality to be the new normality of humanity. There's a strong conflict of interest here, but one that neither side will act on until the time comes. They both need each other to reach their dreams for the future. In this new era of peace, Japan would rebuild. Seeing the ruins of Tokyo as a lost cause, the settlement known as Tokyo 2 was created and completed by the year of 2003. Oddly enough, following the creation of this second Tokyo, construction of Tokyo 3 almost immediately began in Hakone, atop the remnants of the Black Moon. However, this city was far more defense-oriented than the latter. It was said Tokyo 3 would become the country's next capital. Though this honor never befell on the city, it instead became the future headquarters for Zeal's experiments and fortress to defend their ancestor's body. The Shadow Organization learned from the scrolls that contact between two ancestral species would spell the end of one and the rise to godhood of the other. In fear of the death of their species and to prevent the humans from merging the two life forms, the angels would invade humanity's settlement of Tokyo 3 to retrieve the body of Lilith, or in some cases, the embryo of Adam that has fallen into Zeal's hands. Both were located beneath the future city. Humanity and angels became locked in a race war to prevent their own destruction, and their preparation window is all too small. By 2015, the surviving angels from the first impact would reawaken, following the actions of Katsuragi's team in Antarctica. With a little over a decade before the promised day, the race to achieve instrumentality begins. In Shinji's attempts to cope with the loss of his parents, to safeguard both the embryo of Adam they had seized along with Lilith's body still nestled in the remains of the Black Moon, Zeal ordered Gaiden to slowly move into what is known as the Geo Front, a massive underground fortress constructed in the crater of the first impact just below Tokyo 3. Gaiden's move though was postponed as they continued their experiments in the various research facilities across the world. In 2004, the first of two revolutionary advancements in Japan took place. Project E, the development of Evangelion mechas created from the genetics of Adam, began. These Adam-based beings would be used to fight against his descendants. And just as was done in Antarctica with his pure form, a contact experiment between this new Adam-like body and a human was scheduled. The experiment was to be headed by Gendo Ikari and his wife, Yui. They knew the risk going into this scenario, yet regardless, Yui pressed that she would be the one to do it. This was a necessary risk to pursue a world without pain, without suffering for her child. As she entered the chamber with the mecha, Yui would never walk back out the door. The woman would disappear, leaving her husband unable to process this loss, and her son Shinji, both motherless and fatherless. Grief sent Gendo on a downward spiral. Just looking at his son was too much of a reminder of what he lost. He couldn't process it, and so he took out his frustrations on Shinji, eventually abandoning the boy entirely, being engrossed in his research. Gendo would spend the remaining time before the Angels' attack, attempting to reclaim what he lost. Using genetic samples of his wife, the man would try to recreate her, resulting in the creation of clones he would come to call Rei. These clones, however, could not serve as a stand-in for his wife. They lacked souls, incapable of most emotion. Man could not create man. Gendo continues to try and play God, and each time he loses more of what made him human to begin with. He had failed to recapture the life of his wife, and part of the problem is a result of an anomaly. Yui's soul was trapped within the Project E unit. Unbeknownst to him, Unit 01 had been an empty vessel lacking a soul, and it had claimed the first one to touch it. In Germany, at another Gaiden facility, a secondary Evangelion unit was undergoing a similar contact experiment. But unlike with Unit 01, when the researcher touched Unit 02, only their soul was infused with the unit. Unlike in the case of Yui Ikari, who had both her body and soul taken, Kyoko Soiru only lost that which made her whole. Without a soul, her mind was a pile of mush. And after months of suffering in a psych ward, she would take her own life alongside her daughter, Asuka. Only her mind had played tricks on her. She had believed a doll with the same orangish hair as her child was her little girl. Asuka at the time was no older than 4 years old and would be the one to discover her hanging from the rafters. The doll that looked all too like her, hanging beside her. Her mother's feet dangled at eye level. Asuka was left traumatized for life and would blame herself for her mother's death. The contact experiments were considered failures at first, but there were those that made the connection between these two mothers' deaths. It was hypothesized that a pilot could be used in the mecha if they held similar genes to the human whose soul was infused. Shinji and Asuka were chosen as pilot candidates based on their mother-child relationship. Zeal would construct a shell institution named Marduk to hide this truth from the rest of the world, acting as if there was some other special qualifications to the pilot candidacy. This institution simply allowed them to hold all the power and Evangelion technology, along with safeguarding potential candidates based on the fact their mothers must be considered dead through infusing with the units of Project E. Each child chosen for these roles are numbered. Rei is considered the first and acts as their test subject. Asuka is deemed the second. And finally Shinji is named the third child. Due to the straining relationship with his father, Gendo held off on recruiting his son to the program, and for now, the boy is left alone mourning the loss of his mother. In 2010, Gaiden's production of a revolutionary supercomputer, equipped with 3 separate think tank-like brains, the Maggie, had finally finished production, giving the research group the most advanced computer network of all time. Maggie's completion would mark the merge of Gaiden with the Special Operations Unit NERV, as preparations for the impending Angel assault continued. This merge went uncontested due to the untimely death of Maggie's creator, Naoko Akagi, a woman who had taken part in romance with a widowed Gendo. Her death was ruled suicide and had been preceded by the death of the first clone of Rei. The little girl had sparked some sort of jealousy in the scientist after Rei told her she'd never replace Yui in Gendo's heart. She killed the child, then threw herself off a balcony onto her creation below. This marked the first drops of blood of many. NERV would spill onto these floors. Over the next 5 years, As Gaiden merged with NERV, the organization would relocate to the newly constructed Geofront between Tokyo 3, both as a defensive play and as a way to cover up their continued Project E experimentation. The daughter of Dr. Katsuragi would graduate from college and join the ranks of NERV and become their operations director. Her old boyfriend, Yoji Kaji, who she broke up with and ran away from in fear of emotional attachment, decides to join NERV as well and transfers to the German-based facility, becoming a ward to Asuka. He would serve as an agent to Truth, not loyal to NERV nor the Japanese ministry, who tasked him with finding the truth behind NERV's experimentations. He does not work for Zeal nor Gendo, but only in pursuit of understanding what the bigger picture is, on both sides of the coin. Ritsuko Akagi, the daughter of the deceased creator of Maggie, of similar age to Misato and Kaji, joins NERV as its chief researcher in Project E. She, like her mother, begins to have relations with Gendo that heavily damage her mental state. What trauma she experienced that led her down this path is uncertain. It could be that her obsession with work has halted her from finding any romance, and Gendo's constant presence in her life, as they both never leave headquarters, made him subconsciously her only possible options for romance. Gendo sees this woman as a pawn, allowing him to progress towards the future his wife wanted. But for Ritsuko, this man is an outlet for her sexual frustrations and lack of any kind of love in her life. It's an unhealthy relationship, but it's all she has. She continues to help the man develop functioning Evangelions. In the rush to finish the mecha before the Angel Assault slated for 2015, research and development was a brutal task. It wasn't until 2014 the pilot plugs for the mecha would be finished and ready for trial. NERV hastily created a prototype unit given the title 00, which would use the soul of the Rei clone Ritsuko's mother killed as a human infused with the unit. Another Rei 2, would be chosen as its pilot, having shared genetics with the dead clone. This hypothesis of Rei 1 being the vessel used in 00 is backed by the sheer agony that Eva initially wakes to in the first trial run of the pilot plug, as if being woken to the strangulation that led to her death, gasping for breath. With the pilot's failure to control the unit's movements, a scenario that would be given the title Berserk, the trial is considered a failure, and Rei is hospitalized with major injuries. NERV undergoes panic, aware of the enclosing attack of the first Angel only months away, and they still lack a proper fighting mecha and pilot. Gendo is forced to contact his son, who he has not seen in years, to come to Tokyo 3. He had left the boy to live with his school teacher after their falling out reached its breaking point. Unable to process grief, he chose to turn a blind eye to his inner demons, and that bled over to how he treated his son. Just seeing the boy was painful enough. How could he be expected to live with him? He chose the path of a terrible father in an attempt to shield his heart and continue his quest to reunite with his life. Human instrumentality offered him that hope. Shinji is called upon to travel to Tokyo 3. Misato Katsuragi is sent to bring him to NERV to be admitted as a pilot. The beginning of Shinji's story of agony and torment truly begins as cicadas mask the approach of Sasil, the first of many to attack this city. The world of Evangelion, devoid of an almighty being to prevent humans from tampering with forces beyond their comprehension, is about to experience an apocalyptic event that puts shame on the Second Impact. There is no salvation awaiting the just, no divine punishment for the damned. They'll bring that hell into reality themselves. NERV says it theirself, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Humanity